I have this demo that I already started as a practice for what I was going to do here. And one thing I want you to notice is that in the instructions, those right here, this is the headline. Headline is set off by double parens. Introduction deck is set off by double parens. All of these things set off by double parens are things that you do not typeset. In the old days, in a prepared manuscript, this would have been probably written in the margins and then circled. Or if it was written above this, it would be circled. And anything that is circled is an indication to the person setting the type that it should not be typeset. It's an instruction to the typesetter. Bottom here, notice that the instructions include header for the first page, footers for all pages, page numbers, beginning with two facing pages, 24 and 25, and concluding a third page, 48. All full pages, no ads. Page 25 ends with continued on page 48. Page 48 begins with continued from page 25. Pull quotes. You should use these three pull quotes someplace, or other recommended quote from the article. Well, I don't have any that I recommend, but maybe if you see something there that you want to use a pull quote, you can do that. I'll leave that to the discretion of the designer. There are graphics. The graphics will be your best examples from projects 1, 2, and 3. You can use those as illustrations of good typography. In the example on the instruction sheet, you can see those right here. This is a pull quote. This is a pull quote. And this is a pull quote. And these are, I see they've got like really large quote marks on the opening, but not the close. It's sort of interesting technique, I guess. And then the captions. This is a caption describing this illustration, ostensibly. And this is a caption describing that illustration. Now, a bit about multi-column layout techniques. One thing I like to see and expect to see in your layout is as few text frames as possible, preferably only one text frame per page. That's not counting the headers and footers, which are on your master pages. Use more than one only if you can't find any way to place your elements as you intend in a single frame. 40 years ago, you would have ordered type galleys from a type shop, cut the galleys into pieces, then pasted them on an illustration board like a patchwork quilt. For the last 30 years, software has made it possible to create most page composition in a single text frame, much like a letterpress page composed in a single form or lockup. Flow text provided into the frames on the 3 pages so that the story maintains a continuous flow. And I can do that here by adding a text frame. And let's see, Command D place. Sort of wish I'd put that on my desktop. Fact is, I forget where it is. Let's see, Columbia classes, project 5. Here, article 3 ways, 13 ways rather. This is the text. I can use either the Microsoft Word document file or the rich text format file. Doesn't really matter. I'll use the other one. Okay, so there's my text. I can start by Command A, select all, and change this to whatever typeface I'm going to use. Let's say I'm going to use Century Old Style if I've got it. I'll say Century Old Style for now. I can change that later. And I want this to flow into all frames, so I'll click on this and drag another frame here. And click on this one and drag another frame here. Okay. Now I'll have to go through this and delete all the things that aren't really supposed to be here. You know, like I don't need the word headline. I don't need any of these things that are in double parens. I can Command F, find and replace all double returns, either by copying double returns, Command C copy, and pasting it into find, or if you know that the coding for a hard return is $P, you could just type $P in here, or you can actually find it in this @ end of paragraph. And within my document, change all, and that takes care of 35 unnecessary double returns. And then you can start adding your font styles as you choose. I'm going to go back to my demo over here, the one that I already set up. And this shows you some of what you can do with text frame options and paragraph styles and span and split frames. You can see I've divided this into an 8-column frame. Command B, text frame options. This is 8 columns. The gutters are 1 pica. The width of each is 4 picas, 4.5 points. I have no spacing insets. My vertical justification is it starts at the top. And my baseline options, I'm going to use cap height for my first baseline so that it butts up to the top, unless I decide to move it down later. I mean, I might decide that I should put a top inset and maybe start the actual text much lower. That kind of depends on how you plan to do your layout. Let's say I'm going to leave that way for now. Okay, how did I get this way? We're going to undo some of this using the paragraph control panel. I will change this to no splitting or spanning. You can see that looks a little peculiar, doesn't it? I'm also going to go to the keep options and make sure this starts anywhere. Okay, you can see that's a little strange looking now because these columns aren't wide enough for this. The reason I selected 8 columns was because I wanted to have something that was sort of like the example on the instruction sheet where you've got a narrow column and then 2 wider columns. Narrow column for the call outs or an illustration or the captions. I'm going to select this first paragraph and make that span 2 columns. I'm going to select all of these and make them span 3 columns. And then I want to change the keep option for this first wide paragraph, sort of an intro paragraph in a larger type size and bolder typeface. Change the keep options for that to begin in the next column. So that's how I did that. And then this one, I actually set even wider to span 4 columns. Now it's got a hyphen there. I don't like the hyphen. So I'm going to just turn hyphenation off for that paragraph. Another thing I can do is improve the paragraph shape by finding over here, let's see, balance ragged lines. Now, balanced ragged lines sometimes works well and sometimes it doesn't. For example, I don't like this big inlet here, this little bay on my coastline. So I'm going to force good and design to stay together. I can either do a soft return, shift enter. That's a soft return. You can use that to modify paragraph shapes. Or I can delete this space and replace it with Command Option X, which is a fixed or non-breaking space, a non-breaking fixed space. There's actually 2 kinds of non-breaking spaces. Non-breaking fixed spaces, which are fine in my flush left composition, and an adjustable non-breaking space, which I would use if I was using justified text. And I would like you all to try doing this with justified text. This is another opportunity to practice those things we learned from the InDesigner 25 podcast. Change that to this. When I do that, you'll see I've got some big holes, and I'll have to Command Option Shift J, go into justification, and change those to something that will reduce the wide difference between the minimum and maximum word spacing. And I can do a subtle modification to letter spacing and glyph scaling that won't be too noticeable. Turn on the preview, and you can see that looks better. Also, notice I have 2 word spaces there, so I'll fix that. Okay, you'll notice this isn't your actual text. This is the text that I prepared as a script for this presentation so that I'd cover the things I wanted to cover and not flub too many of my instructions. Okay, so this is all a single text frame. I also use some styles here. We go to my paragraph styles palette. It's right here. I'll pull this over here. So this is my head. And if I wanted to show you, and I just sort of set that and then created the style afterwards, but I'm going to change this to raw. And so I selected a size for this. I'm going to change this to the character control panel. This is 72 on 72. This over here is 24. If I wanted to create a style for this, and I already have one, I'll do, actually what I'll do is I'll delete this. Oh, it's very raw. Well, okay. So I need it to span all columns. So I'll say span all. And I need it to be, let's see, that was using Trade Gothic, old condensed for that, I think. I'll use the next, the new version. This is improved for digital composition over the previous Trade Gothic. Heavy condensed, I think. And 72 point on 72. And this I want to be smaller. And I think what I'll do is make a new style, call this head. And in the drop caps and nested styles, I don't want a drop cap, obviously, in my headline, but I might like a nested style where if I add some sort of marker, and I think I'll make that, I already have a style set up for this called head sub style. And the head sub style is this is the same thing, only in 24 point. And after, actually, I want to do nothing, let's say through 2 words. Oh, that's not the way I would normally do that. And then add another one, new nested style, that is head sub style through the end of the nested style. And it sure looks like that's not working correctly. So, oh, because I didn't apply it yet. Okay, what I'd rather do on this is have some sort of marker. And let's say I use an end space. That would be Command Shift N, but I want that to be the same as this style here. I don't want a really big space there. So I need to go into my head again and change this nested style to say none through, I'm going to say up to, so it doesn't include the first end space, up to the first end space, and then the other style through the end of the nested style. Okay, so that's how I could create a head for that. I have a head for this. No, I don't. Okay, this will be new paragraph style for intro, although I'm not doing that style again, so it doesn't really matter that much. And nice if I spelled that correctly. And click on that to apply that. And you can see that these have no style applied. Okay, well, I'm going to make this article text, which is a style that I had created previously. And if I want this to be century-old style, I could change that here, and it changes there, any place I apply that style. And if I'm doing justified composition, alignment, left, justify, hyphenation, I think I'll say words with at least 6 characters and not before 3. So after the first 3 and before the last 3, and hyphenation limit of 1. Better spacing, don't hyphenate capitalized words, don't hyphenate last word, don't hyphenate across a column. And then I might have to hyphenate across the column. It's hard to tell. We'll see what happens. And justification, I want something that reduces the excess variation in word spaces. So I'll try this, give it a little latitude for letter spacing and glyph scaling, but not anything anyone would notice. Okay. And then actually going back to my headline text, you usually want set tighter. Hyphenation can be turned off because I don't expect to break my headline. If I did have to break it, I wouldn't want it to hyphenate. Word spacing here can be much narrower in a large type headline than you would expect in text. So I'm going to make that a lot tighter. And I can also tighten up the word spacing slightly. I'm not going to do anything with the glyph scaling because it's a headline. It's not justified. I don't have to compensate for anything to try to get it to fit. And really the desired values here, 75% of the normal word spacing, minus 10% letter spacing, and 100% glyph scaling are the only things that apply if I'm doing left aligned, right aligned, or center aligned composition. The minimum and maximum only apply when you are setting justified text. Go back to my basic character functions. And for a headline, I want it to be optically kerned because I want much better spacing in a headline than I would expect in body composition. For body composition, metrics is adequate adjustment to the kerning or letter spacing.